Welcome to the Bigger Cash Flow podcast, where we interview business owners and real estate investors that share tips and tricks on how to grow your cash flow and reach financial freedom.
What's up, you guys? Welcome to another exciting episode of the Bigger Cash Flow podcast. Last week, we had Paul Thompson from Little Rock come on the show and talk to us about how he has grown his portfolio to 20 units in just less than 18 months. So this week, we're going to continue with part 2, where he continues to talk about ideas for retirement, creating that cash flow, and using private capital to fund your deals. With that said, let's dive right in. You know, we talked about when we introduced you, you left your corporate job in November 2017, and you've kind of finally made that jump into being a full-time real estate investor. Some of our listeners might be wondering, I have a demanding W-2 job. How do I juggle this? And when do I make the jump itself?
I would have left sooner, knowing what I know now, but I also give myself the grace to recognize that you're uncertain in these kind of uncharted waters, and you want to make that transition and provide for your family appropriately. So you don't have to be in a rush to quit your day job. There are advantages to having a day job. It's a lot easier to get traditional financing when you have a W-2 job. You typically have much easier access to healthcare insurance or medical insurance when you are employed. There are some new advantages with the AMA now that you can have access to healthcare in a way that we didn't have before Obamacare. However, it's expensive. So these are things you need to think through. So I like creating two types of income with real estate, one active and one passive. And the passive is where you're going to generate wealth, but you also want some other source of income, whether it be wholesaling, flipping, going into notes, doing something smart to where you're earning an active income that you can still qualify for bank loans with that active income, because you can now develop a business and that business is generating you cash. However, that takes a lot of time. So start off, if you're in a position of financial strength already, you have a good day job, you don't have a lot of consumer debt, you're in a position where you have capital to deploy, you can do the BRRRR method, and you start buying properties that are generating cash flow. When your cash flow consistently meets your expenses, don't worry about your income, worry about your expenses. How much do I need to live off of? The big mistake people make is they worry about how much they make. It's a completely different tax structure on what you make with W-2 than what you're making with rental income. You want to look at how much your expenses are, and then and that is your freedom number. If it's $5,000 a month, $10,000 a month, whatever you need to maintain a current standard of living that you want to right now, that is the number that you need to achieve with your passive income streams. Once you can hit that and sustain that for 3 months, then you can consider, okay, I think it's time for us to figure out if it's time to make this transition. When you make this transition, you will have an abundance of time available to you to run this active business, which may or may not be active, be real estate. When you air quote retire from your W-2, you're not going to sit on the beach and drink daiquiris I mean, you're going to do something that you enjoy, and it could be finding more deals in real estate, or it could be something completely unrelated. It could be writing a blog about an unrelated topic. Whatever your purpose in life is, that's what quitting your day job is for. Don't run away from your day job, run to something you want to do that gives you purpose in your life.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate something that you just said that caught my attention, which is figuring out your financial freedom number and just reverse engineering that. So many of us, I guess, lack to think about reverse engineering our financial freedom number, because if you think about it, a lot of the things that we do, whether it be, getting a degree from a 4-year university, or, planning for a wedding, or planning for a big vacation, we don't just simply, say I want to get married, or I want to get a accounting degree and just walk through life. We got to figure out, okay, if I want to go to this university, what are some prerequisites? What classes do I need to take? As well as, how much money is it going to cost? Our traditional way of thinking of retirement is stash away as much money as you can in the 401k,
Mhm.
hope that, you get the average return, and one day you can hope to retire at 60 or 65. You got to reverse engineer how much your freedom number is in terms of the lifestyle that you want to live, and then figure out how many rental properties or whatever you're doing, whether it be investing in syndications, that might be your thing.
Sure.
How much passive income do you need to do that? Again, this goes back to a lot of investors coming to me and be like, oh, I'm so overwhelmed. Even with bigger pockets, there's so many forum posts and so much resources
It's a
out there.
lot.
Yeah, which is good. But for somebody who's just starting out, they're like, oh, I don't know what to do. There's like so many things to do. Well, like Paul just said, figure out your financial freedom number, if it's 5,000 a month, and then reverse engineer it, because that's what you've been doing in all other aspects of your life. And you should be doing that for the most important area, which is your financial freedom and the long-term wealth generation for your family.
Yes, and there's a mind shift that you need to make. Shift your mind into thinking about creating streams of income versus piles of money. Because this idea of putting a bunch of money into your 401k and piling it up to get to some millionaire status level and then living off the residual dividends or your withdrawal rate from there is a viable method, but it takes a while. I want to live a life that I want to lead now. And so I'm very careful about my expenses, because every time I add an expense to my personal life or to my business for a service or a feature that I don't need, that's that many more deals I need to go find in order to fund it. So you really want to back into what is really of importance to you. And the trap that most Americans get pulled into, especially Americans, is that we want to look rich. We want to look wealthy. The appearance of wealth is actually what's keeping us from being wealthy in the first place. It's the whole millionaire mindset, or millionaire next door mindset, that the really wealthy people that you want to be are like the Warren Buffetts that been in the same house since the 1970s. Stop trying to look like a billionaire and live a life that you have streams of income that are covering your basic expenses. That is a freedom that is practical. We spend so much time thinking about how we're going to be Mark Zuckerberg. You're not going to be Mark Zuckerberg. If that was going to happen, you would have already done it. But what the reality is for the average person like you and me and whoever's listening to this is the path to abundance, is by finding streams of income and investments that you can practically go and get. And it could just be one house that pays you $100 a month, at least starting off with, for the next 20 years. And then it gets paid off at the year 25, say, and now it pays you in adjusted dollars for the future, the same amount for the next 30 years afterwards. And that's how you can get to retirement faster, is by getting streams of income now that continue to pay you over time. And what we miss a lot of times is that we are taught to think linearly, but we need to be thinking exponentially. Exponentially takes a while to catch up, but once it does catch up, it shoots way past a linear way of thinking. And linear thinking is exchanging your time for money. Exponential thinking is buying cash flow that compounds on itself.
As you were talking about expenses, it reminded me of, there's a picture of Bill Gates and Warren Buffett.
Yeah.
And the quote says, "No Gucci belt in sight."
Right. Most of the messaging that we're given by our culture and society is to look like we have lots of money, and so we spend it, and then we have to put our trips we want to go into on credit card or something. So take a step back and think intentionally about how you direct your money. And when you are spending your money, you're actually expending a bit of your life force. And when you do so in line with the way you want to live your life.
I guess this is a good segue. I wasn't planning on asking this, but personal finance tips or tricks. It seems like we're speaking the same language. So I'm just curious, do you have any personal finance hack? Especially, it would be interesting to hear with a single income, because your wife is a stay-at-home mom.
Right.
Is there any additional kind of tricks that you found to be useful in terms of saving?
Yeah. So when we and my wife first got married, we were trying to figure out how to do finances and one of the things that we did very early on that really helped us was that she had a separate kind of fund money account. And it's almost like I gave her a salary, and take that in the sense that I mean it, is that here's money that, and it was like $300 every paycheck or something. It wasn't a lot of money, but it was enough money for her to go and spend it how she sees fit. And I never got to figure out what she spent it on. It was her money, entirely her money. And then I did the same thing with for me. I had my account where I spent money that was my play money, my fun money. And then we did our big account, all of our real expenses, and we just measure our expenses, and tracking your expenses is really important. And which is not something I'm actually good at, because if it takes anything to be meticulous, I'm not the guy for you. I'm not an accountant's mindset. I'm much more of an idea, creative type. And I want to automate things so that I don't have to think and remember to do things. So I have recently found a service, and this is like within the last couple of weeks that I found it, is a service called Ask Trim. So it's like asktrim.com. And it's kind of like Mint, and it's kind of like a budgeting system. And they also help you eliminate your expenses. They will go and negotiate for you for your AT&T bill or your cable bill or whatever. And they'll, like, from now, I've been trying to cancel my satellite bill, my in my car, which I never listened to, for like 3 months, and I can't ever get a hold of them, and they try and negotiate with me. And so I just gave it to them, and whatever they cancel that expense on, then they get a little piece of it. This service Ask Trim does, but they take care of it for you. And so that's something that's fantastic for me, because I've been meaning to do that for months now. And because I played this game for a while where I would sign up for the 6-month deal, and then at 6 months I would call and renegotiate, and I would just keep getting the lower bill. Well, I finally just stopped using the service, so I just don't want it at all. They're going to take care of it for me. So outsource as many of those kind of mundane things that you're not good at as possible, and focus on the things that you can really control, which is buying investments or minimizing your expenses on kind of unnecessary things. And the psychology of our decision making is as important as the dollars and cents as well. So I try and focus on my strengths, which is not being the meticulous, mundane person, and I outsource as much of that as possible.
The 4-Hour Work Week by Timothy Ferriss, and he kind of talks about Pareto principle, the 80-20, and how 80% of your results come from 20% of your actions. And you want to automate, because we're so used to becoming workers, like thinking that 9 to 5 is productive, but it's actually not. You can work less hours and still be just as productive. As an entrepreneur, I think you can attest to this fact that you don't have to sit in your chair, working on real estate from 9 to 5 to get that same result. You could probably do it in less than a quarter of the time and be just as effective. So that's a great tip. I know before the show, we kind of talked about this briefly, and how you use private funds for some of your deals. So can you kind of talk to our listeners about what is private money in your definition? Because there's a lot of definition out there, and how you're finding these people.
Perfect question. Okay, so let's start off with what private money is. Private money doesn't have a technical definition, so there are a lot of different feelings as to what it is. The way I define it is money that you borrow from a private individual that you already know, or that you are able to make a relationship with. So it's more based on relationships than it is on the actual underlying deal. Hard money tends to look at the deal, and they don't know you from Adam. A private money is basically your friends, family, and associates, and their overlapping circles with you. And so you can potentially find somebody you don't know to lend you money, but you're going to meet them, get to know them for a while, have 3 touches. It's kind of one of the rules. They have 3 touches. You talk to them. You've known them for at least 30 days, and they're now one of your friends. They're in your Rolodex of friends, and for your private Facebook friends, that sort of thing. And then you offer them an opportunity to invest with a deal that you found. And that's the way you find private money, is that you have access to deals. And this is why you want to go find your own deals and not deal with wholesalers who bring you an opportunity, and then you have like 2 days to decide whether or not you're going to do it. So you don't have the money. What are you going to do? So when you have a consistent access to deal flow, then you can say, hey, the next time I have a deal come up, would you be open in investing in learning more about real estate investing? That's the kind of lead into it. And that may not actually come into fruition for 5 or 6 months later. But when you have a deal, you come to somebody else and you say, yeah, we talked about real estate investing before. Would you still be open to learning more about this deal? I have one under contract. Are you open to hearing more about it? And you talk shop, and they may or may not be interested. No big deal. no pressure, no expectations from you. And you just start telling people that you're in the business of investing in real estate. Here's an example deal that I did last week, just like you did. I mean, what you said last Friday, I closed on a deal and here were the numbers. Talk about your last deal, not the deal that you're promising some future gain or whatever. And talk about real deals that you've done. That creates credibility with somebody that you're talking to. Then they're going to ask you if they can be involved. That's how not all, but most or a lot of deals or people I work with, they come to me saying, well, I see that you have deals. I see you're doing deals. How can I get involved? I want to deploy my capital. I'm not sure what to do. Can you help me? That's when you have a relationship that you're going to work on to do private money. And interestingly, you don't need as many private money lenders as people think. You probably only need 2, 3, maybe 4 private money lenders over the span of 5-10 years of investing. It sooner or later you'll tap somebody out, but it's based on relationships. And so your last question was about this idea of if you think you might be somebody who might be private money. And if you have money in your qualified retirement plan, or you have cash in some sort of a liquid account someplace, and you're thinking about doing something in real estate and you're not sure which, that you might be a potential private lender because you have access to capital, you have your own capital, but you don't want to be the investor going out and running down all these deals. That's the people that I tend to work with, is I find the deals, they bring the money, we both make money together. That's if you fall in that category, then you might be a potential private lender. I am also a private lender. I lend money out of my solo 401k to other investors, and I'm a air quote hard money lender, but but it's really private money. I lend for someone to do a BRRRR method, for example. I'm the access to that private money on the front end, and then they refinance me out on the tail end.
And I think one of, again, these half truths that are out there or straight out myths is if you have an IRA, you have to invest in the stock market is something that I get all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't stress, how false that is. By definition, it's an individual retirement account. So you have control. You just have to take control, right?
Mm-hmm.
So whether you're working with a third-party administrator, you just have to put that control back into your hands. And there's a little bit of paperwork involved. There are some, setup fees, but once you do that, you're no longer restricted to some of these brokerages that are just investing in these funds. You can invest in Paul's deals, or you can invest in a syndication or a hedge fund or assisted living or whatever. So I think that's so important. One of the questions I get all the time is, how do I protect myself? So let's just say I have $50,000 in my IRA account and I want to invest in your deal. Can you kind of talk to me about how private lenders are protected?
So let's pretend that you have a deal and you are going to, and you need $50,000 and I'm the lender. And you say, hey, Paul, I got a deal. Would you be interested in lending on this deal? I need $50,000. We're going to close in a couple of weeks. Is that something, you're interested? Well, I say, well, yeah, I'm interested. Let's talk. I say, I charge 10% interest and I charge 2 points. That's my terms. That could be any number of combinations. It could be 5%, it could be 15, it could be whatever makes sense for you and me together. There's no rules as to what that should be. It's what we agreed to. And I say, those are my terms. And would that still work for you? You say, yeah, it would, because I'm just going to hold it for 6 months and then refinance it. So it's perfect. Okay, I'm down for that. So you give me content or information about that deal. And so what I'm going to request is I want to make sure it's a deal that I actually would want to be involved in myself if for some reason you did not perform. You're going to promise to pay me, but if you don't promise to pay me, then I can step in and fix it. And I don't want to do that on a property that I would never want to own. So you want to only lend on properties that you would not mind owning someday, because that's your protection, is that someday you might own it. You are the bank. In this case, you could foreclose and get access to the property. Typically, you probably don't, but that's the catch-all step. So the documents where I'm lending you money and you're paying me debt payments is a promissory note and mortgage, or deed of trust, or depending on what state you're in. But the promissory note is just a promise to pay. And then the instrument, the paperwork, is the mortgage or the deed of trust for whatever state you're in, that secures my interest in the property in the event that you don't pay. Those are the two documents. I want to make sure that you have proof of insurance. You provide me that. And I want lender's title insurance. I want the title insurance company to say, I will secure your title on this. If there's some sort of claim against it, as the lender, you're protected. Once those are the things that are taken care of, and I have faith and trust in you as a person and an investor, then I think it's a good deal. I wire you the money, but I don't send it to you. I send it to the title company. And I do not take title or wiring instructions from anybody but the title company that is sent via secure email. They will only send it via secure email if they're a good title company. So they send me the wiring instructions. I call up the title company. I want to figure out if these people are real. I don't want to send it to some random place in Zimbabwe or something. I want to send it to the appropriate title company that they sent me the instructions. I wired in there. It's in an escrow account. When the deal closes, you start making me payments.
No, I think that was a great summary. And like Paul mentioned earlier, it's really up to negotiations on the terms between you and the lender. So like Paul mentioned, it could be anywhere from 5 to 15%, 0 to 4 points. And also the length. Some lenders might only want to lend to you for less than 6 months, just enough for you to do a burr. But you can also add provisions in there, like maybe after 6 months, if a loan doesn't come out, you can have 2 extensions at a $500 extension fee or something like that. So you can always add those kind of provisions in there to protect yourself, the deal, and also the seller. But my advice always is to people who want to start using private funds is make sure you take care of your private lenders. They get the first deal and they're like, hey, Bo, when's the next deal going to come? Because for me, that was the experience. I had one private lender, everything went well, and he wanted to come back for more and more. Everything's up to negotiation, but make sure you protect the lender.
Yeah, I agree. Do what you say. And I actually named my business WinCore because it has to be a win-win. My core value has to be a win-win or no deal. So everybody has to win. And when everybody wins and everybody's making money, then it becomes so much easier to do the next deal. And most people can't hear this, but listen to me for a second. There is more money out there than there are deals. Way more money. You just don't know how to find it yet. When you find deals, then you will find the money. If the money doesn't show up, then you're either it's not actually a deal or you're not effectively marketing the deal to find the money.
That's a great point, because when I was first starting out, when a broker sends me a deal, like how can I cut costs? Like, does he do flat fees? Like property manager tells me that it's going to be a $5,000 rent ready. It's like, can you do it for $3,000? I was so, I guess, limited in my thinking, and I was trying to squeeze my team. This is a long-term game. And if you treat your team right, you can make so much money together. And I think that's what you're just saying with WinCore. I think that's an awesome name, by the way.
Thank you.
That, if you kind of treat your players right, your team, do it for the benefit of all, like win-win, then it's always going to be on the up and up. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but what you just said, I got super excited. And that was a big learning lesson for me, because in the beginning I was like, how do I cut expenses? How do I cut expenses instead of trying to grow the pie? What advice would you give your younger self in high school?
I don't know if I could have heard it, but my dad actually even gave me this advice. And he said, don't necessarily just go and get a job, but go and figure out some sort of business that you would enjoy doing. And that's exactly right. And you don't have to be a business person in order to be a good entrepreneur. You don't have to be good at math or anything. It's find something that you really are interested in and are curious about, and then do these little side hustles. You're going to have bills, you're going to have responsibilities. So go take care of that, make sure everything's covered. But then instead of goofing off, I didn't have Netflix at the time, but I did something that was Netflix equivalent at the time, video games, whatever. Spend that time, or at least some of that time, developing and investing in skills and knowledge that you can apply into the world to help serve people. And it took me a long time to figure out that to be an effective business person or entrepreneur is that you have to figure out how to be a service of somebody else. The skill to be able to see other people's problems and solve them is profound. It is life-changing. And so we've probably all heard the saying that your net worth is equal to your network. I believe that, but it's better than that. Your net worth is equal to your net worth. I'm sorry, I said it wrong. Your net worth is equal to your network multiplied times your ability to solve their problems. So
Mm,
if you can solve your network's problems, then your net worth will expound profoundly.
I love that. With, I guess, the student loan eclipsing all other form of debt in, America right now, would the advice that you give your kids be a little bit different in terms of going to college and things like that? I'm curious just because,
Yes.
yeah, you're an entrepreneur. What are your thoughts on
Yeah,
that?
I'm super glad you asked that question because that is something I still think about quite a bit because my kids are now 11 and 8. And so I'm very much in that stage of where are they going to go? What's their aptitude and whatnot. So unless your child has an aptitude to go to the most elite colleges, like the top 50 schools in the country, and they're going to get a completely merit-based national merit scholar type scholarship, if in so throw my advice out if they fall into that category, but still that's like the 1% of the 1%. Most people don't fall in that category, and I certainly didn't. I'm just an average guy, and my kids probably will be kind of in the same thing. What are they going to do? Well, they're not going to Harvard, most likely. They don't need to. They a college education has some merit still, but you don't have to borrow for it. You don't have to um, feel like you have to get the most elite education, because that elite education isn't any different, because employers, after you get your first job, employers don't care about where you went to college. And so I'm a big believer in considering this idea of going to the local junior college someplace, getting your 2 years in, figuring out what you want, because you don't know what you want yet when you're 18, 19 years old. Kind of get you into your rhythm of school, figure things out, way less expensive. And actually you probably get your fundamentals, you actually get covered way better in a local community college, because you won't get lost in the sea of this 50,000 person undergraduate
Yeah.
program. So now you're getting really good care and really good education. And then you decide if you want to go to a local state school or you want to go someplace else, and find a way to bankroll it, get merit scholarships, get, um, you know, learn whatever you're best at, the ACT or the SAT, whichever one you're better at, go all in and get really good scores on whichever one those, and actually hire a tutor. Like, and that's what we plan on doing, is when my son is in the sophomore year of college, he's going to take the ACT and SAT, and whichever one he's best at, then we're going to focus on that one. And then we're going to hire a tutor during his junior year. And that's going to be one of his extra courses that year. And he's going to get the best that he can do based on his aptitude. And that will profoundly impact what kind of merit-based scholarships he can get. And that will open up his opportunities significantly.
Yeah, no, I love that. I don't have any kids yet, but my wife and I are talking about starting a family, and I agree with the fact that you should focus on your passion and figuring out what you're good at, like try different things rather than, going to college. And even if you do decide to go to college, like you said, going to junior college, it allows you to pivot. Like if you want to think you want to become an accountant and later you want to go to medical school, then if you already went to the accounting business school, then you have to transfer to like a medical school. And of course, these kind of career paths require a 4-year degree, generally speaking. I don't know how that's going to change. If that's not you, then you don't have to follow the given path. What's next for you and your business, looking ahead to the rest of 2019 and beyond 2020? What are some of your goals?
Well, I am trying to grow multiple streams of residual income. So I've done the rentals. I have my investment portfolio from my 401k stock days. I have that in my index funds, and I'm trying to grow 7 streams of income. And so I've got most of the passive stuff in place. Now what I'm doing is I'm standing up additional legs of the chair, or legs of the table, so to speak, where I'm actually consulting and creating businesses, and then I'm turning those into passive income. So what I've done is I've poured a lot of investment into my knowledge. The gray matter between my ears is my most valuable asset, and it's all of our most valuable asset. So I invest in it heavily, and then I take what I've learned and then I share it with other people. And I do so with a podcast. I have a YouTube channel, and I have all these kind of streams of access to what I've learned. And then when people want to take their business or their investing to the next level, they can engage with me on some professional services. I have a course that I've launched. I'm coming out with a book in a couple of months. So I'm putting as much out there as I can, and I'm creating and standing up these streams of income based on my passions. And I love to learn. So I go and learn something and I figure out how to make that into a small business. And I do this very small and simply. I'm not trying to build an empire. I just like this idea of setting up something and then moving on to the next, because I'm happiest when I'm learning something and then sharing what I've learned with somebody else.
Oh, that's awesome. Where can our listeners go to find more about you and what you do, and how can they contact you?
Sure thing. So my website is pauldavidthompson.com, and you can put that in the show notes. It's spelled the way you might think. And you can actually, what I'll do is I'll put a link up there for anybody who is on your website. What I'll do is I'll put escape. So pauldavidthompson.com/escape. And anybody who comes to that, then they can get a copy of my book that's coming out on April 15th. And they can, I have webinars frequently, and it'll have all my social stuff out there so you can engage, and you can get on my mailing list and get on my, where I do updates and give away a ton of freebies.
All right. So this was really fun. We're going to have to do it again soon, Paul. Thanks so much for coming out on the show. If you guys thought that was helpful, please do us a favor and give us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you may be listening. We appreciate the support, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Bigger Cash Flow podcast. Please remember that opinions of the guests are their own, and nothing on this show should be considered personal or professional advice. Please consult your tax, legal, or financial advisor for personal advice that fit your unique situation. See you next time.